Think deserts are empty. Think again. Beneath these silent dunes lies a whole hidden world. Forests turned to stone. Microscopic life surviving in dust, and fossils that could rewrite how we see human history. For the next hour, we'll dig beneath the sand and reveal the secret life that never left. Stay with me, because the first discovery will shock you. Welcome to Decoding History and Science, where we uncover the mysteries hidden beneath our planet's surface. Today, we're venturing deep below the desert sands, into a world that almost no one ever sees. Because deserts aren't just endless wastelands of heat and emptiness. They're living archives preserving microscopic organisms, ancient fossils, and even entire lost ecosystems that once thrived where only sand now remains. By the end of this journey, you'll see the desert not as a barren void, but as a hidden world of survival, adaptation, and ancient memory buried right beneath your feet. So stay with me, because what we're about to uncover under the sand might just change the way you look at the planet forever. Chapter 1. The Illusion of Emptiness. People often see the desert as a place of nothingness, just heat, dust, and silence. But that emptiness is an illusion, because beneath these endless dunes lies an entire hidden world, alive, ancient, and still evolving. The sand we see as lifeless actually hides layers of history. Just inches below the surface, life quietly thrives, microscopic organisms. Plant roots and small animals adapted to survive in conditions that would destroy most species. Go deeper, and the sand begins to tell stories. Fossilized forests, buried riverbeds, and even traces of ancient humans who once called these places home. A single handful of desert sand can contain millions of microscopic organisms, bacteria, and fungi that survive without rain for years. They cling to moisture, forming living crusts that hold the desert together and allow new life to begin. What looks like dust is actually a breathing surface, fragile, alive, and vital. Beneath that, animals have learned to turn the desert itself into shelter. Foxes, beetles, and countless other creatures live in burrows carved deep into the ground, where temperatures stay cool and humidity lasts longer. Their underground tunnels are like miniature cities, invisible from the surface, but full of life and motion. And even further down, the sand becomes a time capsule. Fossils, bones, and ancient tools sleep under layers of wind-blown history, perfectly preserved in the dry silence. They remind us that the desert was never empty. It was once full of water, trees, and life. What we see as emptiness is actually a living archive, a record of everything that came before us. The desert hides, but it never forgets. So if the desert isn't truly barren, then what happened to all the life it once held? What force could turn a green, thriving world into a sea of sand? That answer lies buried in the next chapter, When the Desert Was Green. Chapter 2. When the desert was green, there was a time, not thousands, but only a few thousand years ago, when the world's greatest deserts were not deserts at all. The Sahara, the Arabian Peninsula, and even parts of modern Iran and Egypt were once covered with lakes, rivers, and grasslands. Elephants roamed across what is now endless sand. Fish swam in places where no drop of water exists today. And humans, our ancestors, lived, hunted, and thrived in the heart of what we now call the world's emptiness. It's almost impossible to imagine. But deep beneath the dunes lies undeniable proof. The forgotten Green Age, roughly 10,000 years ago, the Sahara wasn't the dry furnace we know today. It was a vibrant savanna filled with rivers, lakes, and wildlife. Scientists call this period the African humid phase, or simply the Green Sahara. Rainfall was more abundant, and monsoon systems stretched farther north. Where we now see dust storms, there were wetlands. Where camels wander today, crocodiles once glided through freshwater channels. This transformation happened because Earth's orbit slowly shifted, tilting the planet just enough to change the pattern of sunlight and monsoon rains. The Sahara breathed in life, and for thousands of years it stayed alive. In 2000, satellite imagery revealed ancient river channels hidden beneath the desert sands. Massive, dried-out waterways that could only have existed in a green, thriving landscape, and scattered across the region. Archaeologists began to uncover evidence of human settlements, stone tools, pottery, rock art, and even remains of fish and crocodiles buried under dunes. All of it whispered the same truth. The desert was once full of water. The people of the Green Sahara. Imagine standing in the Sahara 8,000 years ago. You would see herds of antelope grazing on tall grass, hippos wallowing in rivers, and human tribes camped near shimmering lakes. They hunted, fished, and painted their lives on the stone walls of caves, leaving behind beautiful art that still survives today. In the caves of the Tassili Niger Plateau in Algeria, thousands of rock paintings show animals that couldn't possibly live in a desert: giraffes, buffalo, elephants, and even swimmers. Yes, swimmers, people diving, floating, and playing in water that hasn't existed there for thousands of years. Those paintings are more than art. They are eyewitness accounts of a world we can barely imagine. They remind us that the Sahara wasn't always hostile. It was once a cradle of life. The turning point when the rain stopped, but nature is never still. Just as slowly as the rains came, they began to fade. Around 5,000 years ago, Earth's orbit shifted again, and monsoon patterns moved southward. Year by year, the lakes shrank. Rivers turned to dust, grasslands died, and the sand began to move. What followed was one of the greatest environmental transformations in human history: the birth of the Sahara Desert. And this change wasn't local. It reshaped entire civilizations. As the land dried, humans were forced to migrate, leaving behind their once fertile homes. Archaeological evidence shows communities moving toward the Nile Valley, searching for reliable water. This migration may have helped give rise to ancient Egyptian civilization itself, born from people who once lived in the Green Sahara. It's a haunting irony. One of the harshest places on Earth today may have given birth to one of humanity's most advanced ancient cultures. Echoes beneath the sand, beneath the dunes, the memory of that lost world still lingers. Ancient shorelines can be traced from space. Fossilized shells of freshwater snails have been found hundreds of miles from the nearest water. In some areas, massive underground aquifers, fossil water systems still hold the last remnants of that ancient rainfall, trapped for thousands of years. These underground reservoirs are like time capsules, storing the history of a world long gone. Some of this water is being tapped today for human use, a silent echo of a time when the desert was alive. And then there are the fossils. In places like Wadi al-Haytham in Egypt, the Valley of the Whales, the bones of ancient sea creatures lie exposed in the desert sun. Whales once swimming in a warm prehistoric sea now rest in a dry landscape of sand and stone. It's as if time itself flipped the world upside down. The ocean floor turned into desert. The sea creatures turned to stone. Every fossil, every shell, every drop of water beneath the dunes whispers the same story. The desert remembers. The science behind the change. So what turned paradise into desolation? The answer lies in the planet's heartbeat, the rhythm of its orbit. Every 20,000 to 25,000 years, Earth tilts slightly on its axis, changing how sunlight hits the planet. These slow shifts, called Milankovitch cycles, alter wind and rainfall patterns. During the green phases, monsoons push northward, feeding life into regions that are now bone dry. But when the tilt shifts back, the rains retreat, and the desert returns. This cycle has repeated many times through history. The Sahara has switched between lush and barren again and again, a breathing landscape in tune with the planet's cosmic rhythm. We are living in one of its dry phases right now. And yet, climate scientists warn that human activity might alter this natural rhythm forever. The Sahara's future, like its past, depends on how we treat our planet. A lost world waiting beneath. Today, researchers use satellites, drones, and radar to map what lies below the dunes. What they find is astonishing: buried valleys, ancient lakes, and forgotten human settlements frozen in time. Entire landscapes remain sealed beneath layers of sand, untouched since the day the rain stopped. It slashes like a buried library of Earth's memory, and every dune we study turns another page. One day, as technology advances, we might be able to fully reconstruct what this lost paradise looked like, to digitally resurrect the Green Sahara. Imagine walking through a virtual world where giraffes roam under palm trees, hippos splash in wide rivers, and human families build shelters beside freshwater lakes, all in a place we now call the Sahara Desert. It's not fantasy. It's science catching up with history. The desert that was alive. So when we look at the dunes today, the endless waves of golden sand stretching beyond the horizon, we're not seeing emptiness. We're looking at the ghost of an ancient paradise. Every grain of sand is a fragment of something that once lived: plants, animals, rivers, and people. The desert is not dead. It's simply sleeping, waiting for its next breath of life. Because one day, thousands of years from now, when Earth tilts once more and the rains return, the Sahara might bloom again. The rivers may flow. The grass may grow, and the animals may come back. The desert that once lived could live again. We think of deserts as symbols of death and stillness. But in truth, they are only the pause between two moments of life. The sand we walk on today is just the skin of an ancient garden. A garden that once was, and perhaps someday will be again. So the next time you see an endless dune under the blazing sun, remember, you are standing on the memory of a lost world. And in that silence, the desert still whispers its story. But if the desert once thrived with water and life, how did anything survive when the rains disappeared? What forces allowed living things to adapt to this impossible new world? In the next chapter, we'll journey into the microscopic realm to meet the organisms that refuse to die and built life beneath the sand itself. Chapter 3: Microlife. The desert's invisible inhabitants. When we think of life in the desert, we picture camels, snakes, or scorpions, tough, visible creatures built to survive heat and drought. But there's another world hidden beneath the surface, one that you'll never see with your eyes alone. A world that's older, smaller, and far more resilient than anything walking above the sand. Beneath every step you take, an invisible army is at work. Billions of tiny organisms that live, grow, and even cooperate in the harshest conditions on Earth. These are the microlives of the desert: bacteria, fungi, algae, and microscopic animals that together form one of the most mysterious and important ecosystems on the planet. They are the true survivors, nature's smallest warriors against extinction, the hidden foundation of life. If you pick up a handful of desert sand, it may look like nothing more than dust and stone. But that single handful can hold millions of living cells, tiny communities clinging to life in spaces no thicker than a sheet of paper. These microscopic organisms form what scientists call biological soil crusts. To the naked eye, they look like a thin brown film across the ground, dry, cracked, and lifeless. But under a microscope, that crust comes alive with activity. It's a community built on cooperation. Cyanobacteria capture sunlight and turn it into energy. Fungi weave tiny threads that hold the sand together. Lichens, made from algae and fungus living in partnership, produce food and stabilize the soil. And small bacteria fix nitrogen from the air, turning it into nutrients that plants need to grow. Together, they form a living skin that protects the desert from erosion and creates the foundation for all larger life above it. Without these microorganisms, the desert would collapse into dust. With them, it holds itself together, literally. The power of adaptation, but how do they survive in a place that gets no rain for months or even years? How do they live in temperatures that can reach 130 degrees Fahrenheit by day and freeze at night? The answer lies in adaptation at the microscopic level. These organisms have evolved survival tricks that sound almost like science fiction. Some can completely dry out, shutting down their metabolism, and remain dormant for decades until a few drops of moisture awaken them again. Others produce special sugars that protect their cells from heat damage or create pigments that act like biological sunscreen. Some even form protective shells, tiny mineral coats that deflect radiation and trap the little water vapor drifting in the air. They live in the cracks between sand grains, under tiny rocks, or inside salt crystals. Anywhere the light is gentle and moisture might collect. And when rain finally comes, even for a few minutes, they awaken in a sudden burst of color and activity, feeding, dividing, and rebuilding before the desert dries again. It's life lived in short miracles, survival through patience. The desert's breath to scientists. These microorganisms are far more than curiosities. They are Earth's natural engineers, shaping the soil, balancing gases, and even influencing weather. When they photosynthesize, they release oxygen, the same process that once made our planet breathable. When they bind sand grains together, they slow erosion and help plants take root. And when they die, their remains enrich the soil with organic carbon, the foundation for future ecosystems. In fact, some researchers believe that deserts may be one of the largest hidden sources of atmospheric gases on Earth, a silent exchange between the surface and the sky, carried out by organisms too small to see. In this way, even the driest desert breathes slowly, invisibly, and constantly. Life on the edge of science for decades. Scientists have studied desert microbes not just to understand the Earth, but to imagine life beyond it. If microbes can survive here under intense radiation, extreme heat, and near total dryness, then perhaps life could survive on other worlds too. NASA researchers have taken samples from deserts like the Atacama in Chile and the Mojave in California, because their conditions closely resemble those on Mars, and what they found is astonishing. Some desert microorganisms can live with almost no water, using only humidity from the air. They can survive ultraviolet radiation that would kill most life forms instantly. Some even remain alive after years of total desiccation, completely dried out, waiting for moisture that may never come. To scientists, these tiny desert survivors are the closest model we have for potential life on Mars. Proof that life doesn't need comfort, only possibility. The ancient lineage desert microbes are not just survivors, they are ancestors. Some lineages of cyanobacteria have existed for over 3 billion years, long before animals or plants ever appeared. They are among the oldest forms of life on Earth, and they helped create the oxygen-rich atmosphere we breathe today. Think about that. The invisible organisms living in desert sand are direct descendants of the life that built our planet's biosphere. They have witnessed every age, every extinction, every climate shift, and they are still here, thriving where almost nothing else can. In many ways, deserts are their natural museums, vast silent preserves where Earth's most ancient life forms continue their quiet work. A living connection there, something almost poetic about this. The idea that life's smallest forms persist where all others fail. When humans see a barren desert, these microbes see a home. When we see desolation, they see opportunity. They remind us that life doesn't just fill the easy spaces. It fights for every inch of possibility. And when the rains do come, sometimes just once in years, the entire landscape transforms. Within hours, dormant seeds sprout, algae bloom, and the desert floor turns into a living tapestry of color. But that miracle begins with the microbes, the tiny architects who hold everything together until the moment life returns. Without them, there would be no rebirth after the rain. They are the hidden heartbeat of the desert. What they teach us studying desert microbes does more than tell us about the past. It offers clues about our future. In a warming world where droughts are growing longer and ecosystems are under stress, understanding how these organisms endure could help us learn how to protect our own. They teach us resilience. They teach us patience. And they prove that survival doesn't always come from strength, Sometimes it comes from stillness, from the ability to wait for the right moment to awaken. The desert may look empty, but it's anything but silent. Every grain of sand, every gust of wind carries microscopic traveler's life too small to see, yet powerful enough to shape the world. They are the desert's invisible citizens, the first to arrive and the last to leave. And as ancient as they are, they're not the only ones who found refuge beneath the sand. Because while microscopic life learned to survive in the tiniest spaces, larger creatures, foxes, beetles, and snakes built entire kingdoms underground. In the next chapter, we'll follow them into that hidden world to discover how animals turned the desert itself into their home, the architects of survival. Chapter 4: Architects of Survival. Desert animals underground. The surface of the desert is a place of extremes, burning by day, freezing by night. To survive here is to understand one rule: adapt or disappear. And over thousands of years, some creatures have done more than just adapt. They've built entire worlds beneath the sand. Hidden kingdoms of tunnels, chambers, and secret passageways that keep them alive while the sun scorches everything above. They are the architects of survival, and their story reveals one of nature's most extraordinary feats of engineering. The desert fox, the silent engineer. When the night falls over the Sahara, something stirs under the dunes. Tiny footsteps pad softly through the cool sand, a small, bright-eyed creature with enormous ears that seem too big for its body. This is the fennec fox, the smallest fox in the world, and one of the desert's greatest survivors. Its oversized ears are not just for listening. They act as natural air conditioners, radiating excess heat from its body. During the day, the fennec retreats deep into its burrow, a maze of tunnels up to 10 feet underground where the temperature stays cool and stable. It digs these shelters in loose sand, using its paws like shovels, creating chambers where it can rest, store food, and raise its young safe from the deadly heat above. At night, it emerges to hunt insects, rodents, and even small birds, guided by its extraordinary hearing. It can detect the faintest rustle beneath the sand, pinpointing prey that's invisible to the eye. The fennec fox reminds us that survival in the desert isn't about strength. It's about design. Every detail of its body, from its fur to its ears, to its burrow, is part of a perfect blueprint drawn by evolution. The sandfish lizard, the desert swimmer. Now imagine a creature that doesn't walk on the sand, swims through it. Meet the sandfish lizard, a reptile so well adapted that it literally dives into dunes and glides beneath the surface like a fish through water. Its scales are smooth and reflective, reducing friction as it swims through loose sand. It closes its nostrils and eyes to keep the grains out, moving its body in wave-like motions that propel it forward. Under the sand, it escapes predators and avoids the burning heat, a living torpedo in a sea of dust. Scientists once studied this lizard's movement to design robots that could explore disaster zones and shifting terrains, proof that nature's ancient designs can inspire human innovation. To the sandfish, the desert is not a trap, it's an ocean, and it swims through it with effortless grace. The jerboa, the desert's acrobat. Then there's the jerboa, one of the most fascinating little mammals in the desert. With legs like a kangaroo and the body of a mouse, it hops across the dunes at astonishing speeds, sometimes covering 10 times its own body length in a single leap. By day, the jerboa hides in deep burrows to escape the sun. By night, it bounds across the sand in search of seeds and plants, moving so fast that predators rarely catch it. Its long tail acts as a counterbalance, letting it pivot mid-air and change direction instantly. But what's truly remarkable is how it manages to live without ever drinking water. It gets all the moisture it needs from the food it eats. Its body is so efficient that it produces almost no liquid waste. Every drop of water is recycled, every movement calculated for survival. The jerboa's world is one of motion, precision, and balance, a tiny acrobat thriving where stillness means death. The desert beetles, masters of collection in the vast Namib Desert of Africa. Rainfall is so rare that years can pass without a single storm. Yet one small creature has mastered the art of harvesting water from the air itself. The Namib desert beetle climbs to the top of dunes before sunrise and tilts its body toward the wind. Tiny bumps on its shell collect droplets of fog that condense in the cold morning air. Those droplets roll down grooves into its mouth a few milliliters at a time, enough to survive another day. It's a brilliant natural design, part physics, part biology, and scientists have copied it to create water harvesting technologies in real life. In a world where water is life, the beetle has become a living lesson in innovation. It doesn't wait for rain, it creates its own. The desert's buried cities across the world's great deserts, the Sahara, the Gobi, the Mojave, there exists an unseen landscape beneath our feet. Miles of tunnels, chambers, nests, and hidden homes, all invisible from the surface. Each one built by species that have turned survival into an art form. Some burrows stay cool, even when the surface bakes at 130 degrees Fahrenheit. Others collect condensation, creating tiny pockets of humidity that sustain life underground. Entire colonies of ants, spiders, rodents, and reptiles live together in layered systems that function like miniature cities, each level adapted for a specific purpose: rest, reproduction, food storage, or escape. It's a civilization without architects, yet one perfectly engineered by instinct and time. If you could see the desert through the eyes of a scientist, you wouldn't see emptiness. You'd see networks, systems, communication. Every burrow entrance is a doorway to another life form's story. The dance of night and day, when the sun sets and the air cools, the desert comes alive. Owls sweep silently over dunes. Snakes glide like moving shadows. Scorpions emerge, glowing faintly under ultraviolet starlight. It's a world that exists only in darkness, a shifting ballet of life that ends with the first light of dawn. Each creature plays its role in the delicate balance, predators keeping prey in check, scavengers cleaning the land, and burrowers recycling nutrients back into the soil. What seems barren is actually one of the most efficient ecosystems on Earth. The desert doesn't waste, it transforms. The unseen architects. When you look out over a sea of dunes, it's easy to think nothing moves, nothing lives. But beneath your feet, a complex world is in constant motion. quiet, hidden, alive. These animals are not just survivors. They are builders of balance. Their burrows shape the soil. Their movements mix nutrients. Their lives create opportunities for others. Insects, plants, even the microscopic life that came before them. They are the heartbeat beneath the silence, the architects of a world we rarely see, but one that sustains the desert itself. The desert teaches us something powerful, that true strength often hides beneath the surface. That life doesn't shout. It endures, quietly, patiently. And every grain of sand may hold the entrance to another world. But the desert's story doesn't end with animals. There is something far older, hidden below, traces of worlds that existed long before humans walked the earth. In the next chapter, we'll journey deeper beneath the dunes to uncover what lies preserved in the silence of time. Fossils beneath the dunes. The desert's ancient memory. Chapter 5. Fossils beneath the dunes. The desert's ancient memory beneath the burning dunes and endless winds. There lies a stillness, a silence that has lasted for millions of years. The desert, dry and empty to our eyes, is in truth a vast museum of deep time, a place where bones, shells, and forgotten forests sleep beneath layers of sand. Every grain that shifts with the wind is part of a story written long before humankind, before the pyramids, before civilization itself. Hidden just below the surface are the remains of worlds that once thrived, and the fossils beneath the dunes are their whispers, frozen in eternity. The desert that was once the sea. It's hard to imagine now, but many of the world's great deserts were once covered by oceans. Millions of years ago, the Sahara was the floor of an ancient sea, a place filled with coral reefs, giant fish, and strange marine reptiles that ruled the waves. When scientists first discovered whale fossils in the Egyptian desert, massive skeletons buried under sand, they were stunned. How could whales exist in a place where no drop of water remains? The answer came from the rocks themselves. In a remote valley known as Wadi al-Haytan, or the Valley of the Whales, hundreds of fossilized skeletons lie scattered across the desert floor. Perfectly preserved remains of creatures that swam 40 million years ago. These fossils belong to ancient whales, the Basilosaurus and Dorodon. Creatures that still had legs, a reminder of the moment when life was transitioning from land back to sea. Today, those skeletons rest beneath dunes and open skies, telling the story of a planet in motion, a world that changes, dies, and begins again. The desert, in its silence, remembers everything. The hidden rivers beneath the sand, but the sea was only the beginning. Long after it dried away, rivers once flowed through these arid plains carrying water, plants, and life. You can't see them now, but scientists using satellite imaging have found fossilized riverbeds stretching for hundreds of miles under the Sahara and the Arabian deserts. They are called paleocanals, ancient rivers turned to stone. These ghostly rivers reveal that the desert was once green and alive, a landscape of savannas and wetlands where elephants, crocodiles, and hippos roamed freely. Archaeologists have even uncovered stone tools and campfires left behind by early humans. Their footprints frozen in time beside those of extinct animals. Imagine that. The same dunes that now scorch at 120 degrees Fahrenheit once echoed with birdsong and running water. What remains today are only traces, locked in the bones and stones buried beneath the surface. The desert we see is a disguise. Underneath, it is still remembering the rain. The giants beneath the sand in the heart of North Africa. Paleontologists uncovered something even more astonishing. Fossils of Spinosaurus, the largest predatory dinosaur ever discovered. Larger than T-Rex, this enormous creature once hunted in what is now desert wasteland. Its long, crocodile-like snout and sail-shaped spine told scientists something incredible. Spinosaurus was a semi-aquatic hunter, built to swim in rivers that no longer exist. Today, its bones lie scattered across ancient sandstone, a creature of water preserved in a world without it. Nearby, in the deserts of Mongolia's Gobi, another time capsule hides whole nests of dinosaur eggs still resting where they were laid over 70 million years ago. Some even contain fossilized embryos, tiny skeletons frozen in midlife. When they were discovered, it wasn't just a scientific find. It was a resurrection of an entire lost world. Every fossil found beneath the desert rewrites a piece of Earth's history, proof that what we call lifeless is simply life waiting to be remembered. The perfect preservation of silence. There's a reason why deserts preserve the past so well. Unlike jungles or oceans, where life decays quickly, the dry air and shifting sands act as a natural vault. Here, time slows. TA halts. Bones, footprints, even ancient pollen can last for millions of years. The desert doesn't destroy, it protects. Every storm that buries something also saves it, sealing it away from wind, rain, and oxygen. What's hidden today may one day re-emerge, perfectly preserved, when the wind changes direction or a dune moves aside. In this way, the desert acts as the planet's memory keeper, holding not just fossils, but the record of evolution itself. When humans met the desert, long after the dinosaurs vanished, humans entered this landscape, early hunter-gatherers who followed the rivers that once crossed these plains. They left behind tools, carvings, and cave art showing giraffes, elephants, and even fish, proof that the desert was once a living paradise. Archaeologists digging in the Sahara have found human remains buried beside shells, suggesting these early people once lived by the sea. They worshiped the sun, tracked the stars, and told stories under the same skies we look at today. When the rain stopped and the land began to dry, they moved on, but their artifacts remained, sealed under sand, untouched for thousands of years. The desert became their tomb, their archive, their testament. And though the people disappeared, their voices still echo through the relics they left behind. The fossils beneath the dunes are more than relics. They are evidence of transformation. They remind us that the earth is alive, always changing, and that, even in death, there is preservation, a promise that nothing is ever truly lost. But if the desert remembers its ancient life, then perhaps it also hides the forces that shaped it, the winds, the heat, and the storms that carved this world into what we see today. In the next chapter, we'll uncover that story, the sculptors of sand, wind, heat, and time. Chapter 6. The sculptors of sand, wind, heat, and time. The desert seems eternal, an unchanging sea of sand stretching beyond imagination. But this landscape is not still. It is alive, moving, reshaping itself every second. Every grain of sand is a traveler, carried by invisible sculptors, the wind, the heat, and the endless patience of time. Together, they have carved mountains into dust, turned rivers into silence, and transformed once living worlds into vast golden plains. This is the story of how the desert itself was born, a story written not by living creatures, but by the forces that outlast them all. The wind, nature's invisible hand. There is no sound more haunting than the desert wind. It can whisper like a voice from the past, or roar like 1,000 storms colliding. But beyond its beauty lies power. The power to shape the earth grain by grain. The process is called Aeolian erosion from the name of Aeolus, the ancient Greek god of the winds. Over millions of years, wind has acted as nature's sculptor, lifting dust from one place and setting it down in another, chiseling rocks, hollowing canyons, and raising dunes that move like living waves. A single gust can carry sand for hundreds of miles. And though a grain of sand is tiny, multiplied by time, it becomes a force that can level entire landscapes. Every sand dune you see is a monument to movement, an ocean frozen in slow motion where the waves take centuries to rise and fall. Some dunes move quietly, advancing just a few inches each year. Others travel like storms, swallowing villages, roads, even ancient monuments. But they all obey the same rhythm, the breath of the earth itself. The heat, the fire that shapes silence, the desert sun, is merciless. It burns the surface by day and abandons it by night, leaving behind temperature swings that would destroy most worlds. At noon, the ground can reach over 160 degrees Fahrenheit, 70 degrees Celsius. Hot enough to warp metal, melt tar, and crack stone. By midnight, that same ground can plunge below freezing. This violent contrast is one of the desert's greatest sculptors. Rocks expand in the heat and shrink in the cold, a slow, invisible dance that breaks even the hardest mountains into dust. Scientists call it thermal fracturing. But in truth, it's the language of time. Heat speaking to stone, telling it to surrender one crack at a time. It's the same process that creates the fine sand we see today, the ruins of ancient mountains ground down by centuries of fire and frost. Each grain is a fragment of something vast that once towered above. The desert in this way is not death, it's transformation. Mountains become sand. Sand becomes dunes. Dunes become memory. The dance between wind and sand, when the wind meets the sand, a silent choreography begins. Each grain moves in one of three ways: rolling, hopping, or flying. The lightest grains lift high into the air, carried for miles, while heavier ones bounce and tumble, colliding with others, knocking them loose, and sending them into motion too. This chain reaction creates sand dunes, the living forms of the desert. Some rise as sharp crescents, called barshans. Others stretch into long parallel lines, known as safes. Some form giant star-shaped peaks that tower hundreds of feet high, each arm pointing in a different direction depending on the wind. Deserts like the Rub al Khali in Arabia, or the Namib in Africa. Hold dunes so massive they cast shadows large enough to be seen from space. They move slowly, sometimes only a few meters per year, but they never stop. They breathe, they migrate, they erase the footprints of time. To stand at the top of one is to witness the earth in motion, a motion so slow we can't feel it, yet so powerful it shapes continents. The role of time, the eternal sculptor. Wind and heat are the tools, but time is the true artist, because nothing in the desert happens quickly. Mountains erode grain by grain. Valleys are carved molecule by molecule, and dunes shift like the hands of a clock that moves once a millennium. To the human eye, it seems motionless. But if you could fast forward 1,000 years, you'd see the dunes drifting like waves, the mountains collapsing into dust, and the entire landscape flowing like a golden ocean under the sky. The desert teaches us that creation is not always sudden. Sometimes it takes silence. Sometimes it takes patience so deep that even stone begins to yield. In the end, the desert is not a place of death, but a living sculpture shaped by wind, fire, and endless time. It teaches us humility, that even the strongest mountains will one day fall, and even the smallest grains can shape the world. But as the sands move and reshape the earth, they also hide something else, traces of water, life, and memory that refuse to vanish. Because deep below the dunes, there are whispers of an ancient underground world, a network of hidden aquifers, lost rivers, and buried oases that still breathe beneath the silence. In the next chapter, we'll follow that trail into the desert's hidden rivers, water beneath the sands. Chapter 7: The Desert's Hidden Rivers. Water beneath the sands at first glance. The desert seems lifeless, a place where water has long vanished. But beneath the golden silence, there's another world. A world where rivers still flow, where lakes still breathe, and where ancient seas sleep beneath the dunes. What we see as emptiness is actually a landscape holding the memory of water. The ghosts of ancient rain thousands of years ago. These deserts were alive. They had rain, forests, and wild rivers that carved deep valleys through the land. And though the surface dried, that ancient water never truly disappeared. It sank underground, trapped in rock layers like a buried ocean. Scientists call it fossil water, water that fell as rain more than 10,000 years ago, now sealed beneath layers of sandstone across Africa and Arabia. The Nubian Sandstone Aquifer, stretching beneath Libya, Sudan, and Egypt, holds enough water to fill entire seas, a silent ocean beneath the sand. The invisible rivers below these aquifers are not still. They move slowly, drop by drop, through cracks in stones, creating hidden streams that surface as oases. Tiny pockets of green surrounded by miles of gold. Every oasis tells the same story of survival and balance. The Siwa Oasis in Egypt and the Abari Lakes of Libya exist only because of these secret rivers that rise to breathe through the earth. To the traveler, they seem like miracles, but to the desert, they are memories, moments when the world above connects with the life still flowing below. Ancient wells and human memory for nomads and ancient travelers. The knowledge of these hidden waters meant life or death. They learned to read the sand, the wind, the color of dust, the way birds circled in the distance, all signs of water deep beneath their feet. Generations carved wells by hand, some so deep they reached water that hadn't touched the sky in thousands of years. Even today, their stone walls still glisten with drops of a forgotten age. The science and the warning modern satellites now reveal what ancient travelers once felt beneath their feet. Vast underground networks of water connecting entire continents. But there's a danger. We are draining these fossil waters faster than they can ever return. Once gone, they're gone forever. Libya's great man-made river project pumps billions of gallons every day from these ancient reserves. It brings life to the desert again, but at a cost. Every drop is a piece of the past we can never replace. Whispers beneath the sand deep below. The water is rich in minerals, and sometimes it glows faintly under certain conditions, earning it the ancient name, the blood of the earth. Even in silence, it moves. Even in darkness, it remembers. The desert may seem dry, but it still dreams in water. Hidden rivers still flow, carrying the last whispers of a time when this sea of sand was a sea of life. The desert hides many secrets, but none more precious than water. It connects the past to the present, the surface to the depths, and reminds us that even in the harshest emptiness, life finds a way to endure. But what if life still thrives down there in total darkness without sunlight or air? What if the desert's true secret isn't water, but life itself? Chapter 8. Life Without Sunlight. The desert's underground microbial world. Beneath the dunes, far from the reach of light or rain, life still exists. Not in the form of animals or plants, but as something much older and far more mysterious. These are the hidden inhabitants of the desert, microbes that breathe in silence, feed on stone, and survive in conditions where almost nothing else can. Life at the edge of existence. To most, the desert is death. But to a scientist, it's a living laboratory, a place that reveals what life can endure when everything else is stripped away. Under a microscope, a single grain of desert sand comes alive. It crawls with bacterial colonies, fungal spores, and microscopic algae that lie dormant for years, waiting for a single drop of rain to awaken them. Some survive inside tiny air pockets in rocks, others beneath crusts of hardened soil that look dead but pulse with invisible life. These are extremophiles, organisms that don't just survive the impossible, they define it. The desert's hidden ecosystem just below the surface. In a few centimeters of soil, a secret network exists. Microbes capture moisture from the air at night, build thin living layers called biological soil crusts, and hold the sand together, preventing it from blowing away. Without them, deserts would not just be empty, they'd be unstable, erased by every gust of wind. In these crusts, cyanobacteria, fungi, and lichen work together like a miniature ecosystem. They trap carbon, fix nitrogen, and create the base of the desert food chain, quietly sustaining the life above them. They are, in a sense, the desert's skin, thin, fragile, and alive. Microbial survival. The science of resilience. How do they survive without water, sunlight, or nutrients? Some microbes enter a state called cryptobiosis, a kind of suspended animation where all biological activity stops. They can stay that way for decades, then come back to life instantly when moisture returns. Others feed on minerals, extracting energy from iron, sulfur, or even hydrogen gas trapped in rocks. In complete darkness, they create their own food, a process known as chemosynthesis, the same method used by organisms in the deep oceans. It's almost as if the desert floor is breathing quietly, keeping itself alive in slow motion. The Martian connection. Because of these desert microbes, scientists now believe that life beyond Earth may not be as impossible as once thought. In Chile's Atacama Desert, one of the driest places on the planet, NASA discovered bacteria living beneath salt crusts, surviving without sunlight or liquid water for decades. These microbes are strikingly similar to what could exist on Mars, a planet with deserts of red dust, freezing nights, and buried ice. If life can thrive beneath the sands of Earth's deserts, why not beneath the sands of another world? The desert, in many ways, is Earth's natural Mars simulator, a place where we can glimpse the limits of biology and perhaps the origins of life itself. A hidden intelligence. Some researchers suggest these microbial colonies might communicate in ways we're only beginning to understand, through chemical signals, shared DNA, and cooperative networks that act almost like a primitive brain. They warn each other of dryness, share nutrients, and even coordinate when to go dormant or awaken. In the emptiest place on Earth, a microscopic intelligence endures, ancient, silent, and perfectly adapted. The desert's secret lesson, if the desert teaches one truth, it is this: life does not need abundance to exist. It only needs balance, a drop of water, a fragment of stone, a moment of shade. Even where the sun burns the hardest and where death seems certain, life finds a way to whisper back. And sometimes that whisper becomes a roar. Not of sound, but of survival. So when you walk across the desert and the world seems silent, remember, it isn't. Beneath your feet, a hidden universe is alive. A world that doesn't depend on sunlight or rain, but on patience, endurance, and time itself. And perhaps that's the desert's greatest secret, that even in lifelessness, life endures. Chapter 9: Seeds of Survival. How life adapts and returns in the desert. Time moves differently. Days burn, nights freeze, and months can pass without a single drop of rain. Yet somehow, life still returns. When the storm finally comes, a brief, fleeting burst of rain, the desert transforms overnight. Colors explode where there was only dust. Flowers bloom. Insects emerge. Birds return. It's as if the earth itself exhales. But how does this miracle happen? How does life survive when the desert gives it nothing? The power of waiting. Every living thing in the desert has learned one secret: to wait. Seeds lie buried for years, locked in the sand, protected by hard shells and invisible coats of wax. They look dead, but inside they are alive, frozen in time, waiting for the faintest sign of moisture to awaken. When rain finally touches them, chemical signals burst into action. Dormant embryos begin to breathe. Within hours, roots dig into the soil, and fragile stems push toward the light. From death comes life, not by chance, but by design. The dance of short lives, the desert rewards those who live fast. Plants that awaken after the rain know their time is short. They must grow, flower, and seed before the heat returns. In a single week, an entire generation is born and gone. Their purpose is not to survive, but to leave behind seeds strong enough to wait again. It's a cycle of endurance, a rhythm written into the DNA of every desert creature. Even the tiniest plant becomes a storyteller, passing the memory of survival from one storm to the next. Masters of adaptation, some desert plants, like the welwitschia of Namibia, can live for over 1,000 years with just 2 leaves, drawing moisture not from rain, but from fog carried on morning winds. Others, like the resurrection plant, curl into a brown ball during drought, appearing dead for years. But when water touches it again, it unfolds green, alive, reborn in minutes. It's nature's quiet miracle proof that life doesn't disappear in hardship, simply changes form, waiting for its moment to return. Animals of the after rain, the rain brings more than plants. It wakes an entire hidden world. Beneath the sand, frogs, insects, and crustaceans rise from underground chambers where they've slept in suspended life. The spadefoot toad, for example, spends nearly a year buried, emerging only when the scent of rain reaches the soil. Within hours, it sings, mates, and lays eggs. A full cycle of life compressed into days. The desert is not dead. It simply breathes in slow motion. The symphony of survival, what looks like emptiness, is actually coordination, a vast network of living things, each waiting for its signal. Seeds, roots, insects, reptiles, all respond to the desert's rhythm like instruments in a timeless orchestra. When the rain falls, it's the conductor's cue, and for a brief, breathtaking moment, everything comes alive. Then, just as quickly, it fades, the sun returns, the ground dries, but beneath the surface, the next generation waits silent, patient, ready. The lesson of resilience. In this rhythm, the desert reveals a truth that goes beyond science. That survival is not strength alone, it is patience, timing, and faith in renewal. The desert teaches that life doesn't fight the harshness, it learns to move with it. Everything that endures here does so not by resisting change, but by adapting to it. And maybe that's why the desert is not empty, it's eternal. Every drop of rain, every buried seed, every living thing that waits beneath the sand is part of a story older than humanity. The story of how life always finds a way back. So the next time you see the desert, don't see a graveyard of dust. See a sleeping world, a place where patience grows roots, and life always returns when the time is right. Because the desert isn't lifeless. It's alive, just waiting for its moment to bloom. Chapter 10. Lessons from the Sand. The desert's message to humanity. The desert is more than just a landscape. It is a teacher, silent, patient, and eternal. Every grain of sand holds a memory. Every dune is a story written by the wind. And every storm, every moment of stillness reminds us of one simple truth. Nothing truly dies. It only changes form. the desert's timeless wisdom. For thousands of years, humans have feared the desert, its silence, its emptiness, its heat. But maybe the desert was never a place to fear. Maybe it was always a place to listen, because here, life survives not through strength, but through adaptation. It endures not by abundance, but by balance. The desert doesn't waste. It doesn't rush. It waits. It teaches that survival isn't about controlling nature. It's about understanding it. In a world racing toward exhaustion, the desert whispers the secret of endurance. Slow down and learn to live with less. The mirror of humanity in many ways. The desert reflects us. We too have turned fertile lands into dust. We too have chased abundance and forgotten balance. But the desert shows what happens when excess fades, when only the essentials remain. And yet, even here, life finds a way. Seeds wait for rain. Water hides beneath stone. Microbes sleep for centuries, waiting for their time to awaken. If life can endure here in the harshest place on earth, then maybe humanity can too. If we learn to adapt, to wait, and to respect what we cannot control, the whisper of time stands still in the desert long enough, and you begin to feel its age. The dunes shift like waves of an ancient sea. The air hums with a stillness that feels older than sound itself. You realize the desert isn't empty. It's eternal. It remembers worlds that came before, and it will outlast the ones yet to come. It doesn't fight time, it flows with it. And that is its greatest wisdom. The hope beneath the sands, beneath the silence, the desert still breathes. Hidden rivers flow, seeds sleep, microbes dream. Life waits for its chance to rise again. Proof that even in the most unforgiving places, hope is never truly lost. The desert teaches us that rebirth is always possible for ecosystems, for civilizations, and for humanity itself. The desert's final message. The next time you see an endless stretch of sand, don't see emptiness. See potential, see patience. See the resilience of life itself, because the desert is not lifeless. It is alive in ways we can barely imagine. It holds the memory of water, the silence of time, and the strength to begin again. It's the Earth's reminder that no matter how far we fall, life will always rise, just as it has for millions of years beneath the sand. If this journey through the desert moved you, if it made you see this world a little differently, then don't let it end here. Join us on Decoding History and Science, where we explore the mysteries of our planet, the stories written in stone, the secrets hidden in time, and the endless wonder of life itself. Like, share, and subscribe to be part of this journey of discovery, because every landscape, every fossil, every grain of sand has a story to tell, and together we'll keep decoding it, one mystery at a time.